From the outside, the mansion looked like a dream: marble pillars, glass walls gleaming under the afternoon sun, and gardens that seemed to stretch endlessly into the horizon. To anyone passing by, it was a picture of wealth, success, and elegance. But behind those polished doors, in the middle of that grand estate, something far darker was unfolding. A moment that would shake the lives of everyone inside and expose the truth about love, respect, and the meaning of humanity. It started with laughter, cruel, cutting laughter, echoing down the marble staircase, the kind of laughter that wasn't born from joy but from superiority. A maid, trembling and holding back tears, stood cornered in the dining hall as the fiancé of the mansion's owner mocked her in front of staff. And in that very moment, the millionaire himself, the man who owned it all, walked in and saw everything. Before we dive deeper into this powerful and emotional story, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the dignity every human being deserves, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone you care about, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel Kindness Corner. Your support helps us keep spreading stories that touch hearts and remind the world that kindness always matters. The maid's name was Clara. She was in her early 20s, delicate in frame, with eyes that spoke of resilience despite hardship. Life hadn't been kind to her. She had grown up in poverty, the kind where a single meal felt like a blessing and schoolbooks were a luxury that could never be afforded. When her parents passed away within months of each other, Clara was left with nothing but memories and debts. She found work wherever she could, scrubbing floors, carrying loads, often going without food just so she could survive another day. When she finally got a position in the mansion of one of the city's most admired millionaires, she thought she had been given a chance at stability. The pay was modest, but the roof over her head and the promise of daily meals gave her hope. What Clara didn't expect was the cruelty of one person, Isabella, the millionaire's fiancée. Isabella was beautiful, no one could deny that. She carried herself like she owned the world, her presence commanding every room she entered. But beneath her polished exterior was a sharpness that cut deeper than knives. She looked at Clara not as a person, but as something less, something beneath her. Every mistake Clara made, no matter how small, was magnified. If Clara served tea a minute too late, Isabella would sneer. If Clara dropped a spoon, she would be humiliated in front of the other staff. And yet, Clara endured, because survival required silence. On that fateful afternoon, Isabella's cruelty reached its peak. She had invited a few friends over for tea, wealthy socialites who shared her shallow view of the world. Clara, nervous but determined, carefully arranged the table. But in her haste, her hand slipped, and a porcelain cup, delicate and expensive, fell and shattered on the floor. The room went silent. For a second, Clara hoped Isabella would simply scold her. But instead, Isabella stood up, her face twisting with venom, and began to mock Clara loudly in front of her guests. She called her useless, clumsy, unworthy. She made Clara kneel and pick up the shards while laughing with her friends at her expense. Clara's hands shook as the sharp edges cut into her skin, drawing small lines of blood, but she stayed quiet, holding back tears, swallowing the humiliation as if it were her daily bread. What Isabella didn't know was that David, the millionaire, had just returned early from his business trip. He stepped into the mansion quietly, his footsteps softened by the plush carpets, until he heard the sound of cruel laughter. Following the noise, he entered the dining hall, and froze. There before him was the woman he thought he would marry, the woman he believed he knew, towering over a trembling maid whose hands were bleeding as she picked up broken glass. His heart clenched as he saw Clara's silent suffering. And then he heard Isabella's words, dripping with disdain, words that tore through him like fire: "Girls like you don't belong here. You're lucky you even get to breathe the same air." David's chest tightened with fury. His entire life, he had built his empire with respect for his employees, his partners, and every person who crossed his path. He believed wealth was a responsibility, not a weapon. And now, the woman he trusted most had turned that belief into a mockery. He didn't speak at first. He simply walked forward, his presence so commanding that the laughter in the room died instantly. Isabella's smile faltered as she saw him, but she tried to cover it up with her charm. "David. You're back early," she said sweetly, as if nothing had happened. But David's eyes weren't on her. They were fixed on Clara, who still knelt on the ground, her hands bleeding, her face pale with humiliation. David bent down and gently took Clara's hands, ignoring the sharp edges of the glass. He helped her to her feet, his voice low but firm as he asked if she was hurt. Clara shook her head quickly, her instinct to downplay her pain still guiding her actions. But David saw everything. He saw the red marks on her skin, the silent tears in her eyes, and most of all, the fear that she wasn't allowed to matter. Slowly, he turned toward Isabella, his jaw set. The silence in the room grew heavier with each passing second, until finally, David spoke, his voice calm but filled with thunder. "Is this who you are?" The room grew tense as Isabella's mask slipped. She tried to laugh it off, claiming Clara was careless, that she was teaching her a lesson. But David didn't flinch. He looked at her the way a stranger might, as though he was seeing her for the first time, and what he saw broke his heart. In that moment, the truth was clear. This was not the woman he wanted to spend his life with. Not someone who tore others down to feel powerful. Not someone who used cruelty as entertainment. David turned to the guests, who sat in awkward silence, their eyes darting between the fiancé and the man of the house. With a voice that carried the weight of his soul, David said, "In this house, no one is less than anyone else. Not the maid. Not the gardener. No one. If you cannot treat people with kindness, then you do not belong here." His words struck the room like lightning. Isabella's face burned with embarrassment, her friends shifting uncomfortably in their seats. But David didn't stop there. In front of everyone, he ended his engagement. His words were final, unshaken. "You are not the woman I thought you were. Leave." The silence that followed was deafening. Isabella, humiliated and furious, stormed out, her pride shattered. Her friends, unsure of where to place their loyalty, quietly excused themselves, leaving the mansion hollow and still. David then turned back to Clara. He asked the staff to bring her first aid and made sure her hands were treated with care. Clara, overwhelmed with emotion, tried to thank him, but her words caught in her throat. She wasn't used to kindness, not like this. For the first time in years, she felt seen. What followed in the days ahead was unexpected. David, deeply moved by what he had witnessed, took time to know Clara beyond her uniform. He learned about her struggles, her dreams that she had buried under the weight of survival, her quiet resilience. Clara, in turn, saw in David not just a man of wealth, but a man of depth, someone who valued character over status. Their bond grew, slowly but surely, not born of grand gestures but of quiet moments of understanding. Months later, Clara's life had changed. Not because she sought riches or because she wanted to climb into a world that had always pushed her down, but because she had finally been given dignity. David sponsored her education, encouraged her to pursue the dreams she once thought were impossible, and stood by her as a friend before anything else. The mansion that once felt like a cage became a place of hope. And as Clara grew, so did the admiration of everyone around her. She became not just a maid, but an inspiration, proof that kindness could rebuild even the most broken spirit. And the day came when David, no longer seeing her as an employee but as the woman who had captured his respect and heart, asked Clara to walk beside him, not as a maid, but as his equal, his partner, his love. The world gasped, society whispered, but none of it mattered. What mattered was that a man who believed in kindness chose love rooted in respect, and a woman who once thought she was invisible finally realized she was worthy of being loved. If this story has touched your heart, if you believe that dignity, respect, and kindness should always come before wealth and status, please take a moment to like this video, share it with friends and family, comment your feelings, and subscribe to our channel Kindness Corner.